Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again. Today, we're going to take a look at a couple of battles here. And when we do a little bit of Civil War research, there'll be an opportunity to certainly look at many more battles at least. There are so many Civil War battles. If you do a quick Google search of them, I mean, they're just literally hundreds of them. So there's a few really important ones. Believe we mentioned Antietam a few days ago as the single bloodiest day, one-day battle, and after that, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. Let's take a look at this Siege of Vicksburg. If you recall, one of the original grand strategy plans was to split the Confederacy in two, and that meant capturing the Mississippi River, which is this squiggly, I mean, look at all those turns and loops and everything like that, and of course it goes all the way down, there through Baton Rouge and eventually through New Orleans. And so, at any rate, the capture of the Mississippi River would effectively split the Confederacy in two. And Vicksburg, as you can see, it's circled right there. Vicksburg was the last Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi River. And so there are some places in the river which you just can't cross because the river's just going too fast, or perhaps it's too deep or too wide, or just take way too long. And there's other places that are crossable much more easily. And typically you'd have forts there to prevent people from crossing the Mississippi. And Vicksburg was one of those forts. Now, the importance of Vicksburg, of course, is if Vicksburg fell, the Confederacy would be cut in half. And it was the use of siege tactics. And what this is an enemy position is just surrounded, and nothing is let in or out of the enemy camp. And eventually, the enemy will surrender because they'll run out of food, water, disease will take over. And they'll run out of ammunition eventually. They cannot be resupplied. And you can be resupplied because you are outside. Wow, excuse me. Pardon me. But you can be resupplied because you are outside of the fort. And so this is an effective way, but it takes a long, long, long time. But eventually, Vicksburg was captured, and the Mississippi was controlled by the Union, dividing them, the Confederacy, in half. And notice the dates down here. It took a while, May 18th to July 4th. A lot of this stuff in these three slides are very, very similar in dates. So, that did, take quite a bit of time there. Another one was probably the one that is most noted. Certainly, there's a tour, of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, which you can go on, and it's very one of the most toured areas, certainly from the Civil War standpoint. Again, if you see the dates down there in July 1st, whoops, that's not good. July 1st, 1863 to July 3rd, 1863. And one of the bizarre things is we know that one of the Confederates' advantages is that they fight a defensive war, and they know their terrain. And the Union had to come and move the Confederates out of their territory. And Robert E. Lee, who really was an amazingly talented general, and I'm no military expert, but this would seem to be a mistake that Robert E. Lee said, you know what, let's invade the North. Now, by invading the North, you're giving up, you two of your most crucial advantages. One, you're not fighting a defensive war anymore. And two, you might not be as familiar with the terrain. Now, the reason Robert E. Lee felt this way is because he was being a little bit desperate in terms of running out of supplies, internal disagreements. How much longer could he keep the Confederacy together? So what he thought was that it would gain civilian support and shock the Union into agreeing to a truce. Again, this sort of thing, let's wear down the will of the Union. Let's make it so painful to the Union to continue to fight that it's just not going to be worth it. Remember, we'd call that a war of attrition because you're wearing down the will to fight. And so what happened is it was a 3-day battle, and it turned out to be a slaughter of Confederate troops and the bloodiest battle in U.S. history, meaning more U.S. deaths. In particular, there was a very sad, is the only really way to say it, this thing, Pickett's Charge, where continually men were ordered to charge up a hill which is probably the worst thing to do. I mean, you're just shooting downwards and they're slow, going uphill. 15,000 men assaulted the uphill position held by the Union. A few broke through, but the rest were slaughtered, and that contributed to making the Battle of Gettysburg certainly one of the bloodiest in U.S. history. It was a 3-day battle, of course, but this, really turned the tide, clearly in favor of the Union. Now, even though there were still going to be a couple of years before the Civil War comes to an end, both sides were drafting, trying to get more people into the military. Now, the draft was unpopular for both sides and for many, many people. Focusing more on the North, what we could see here is that there was a rule that if you were drafted, you could pay $300 to have someone else fight for you. Now, $300, it's a lot of money, but certainly back then that was I don't say fortune, but it certainly was a very significant amount of money, and you certainly had to be a person of means. You had to have some wealth to be able to take $300 and say, oh, okay, here you go, just go fight for me. Now, of course, this caused tremendous resentment for people who could not afford that, the poor, saying, okay, so my life is worth $300 basically. Now, of course, you didn't have to take that, but for many people, it's like, wow, this money could help my family. I might get drafted anyways, so why not just take the 100 and go? Another reason why it was very, very unpopular was because many people didn't feel that risking their lives for the issue of slavery was worth it. They're like, look, we don't have slavery, but if they want to, who cares? Uh, and many people just said, look, I'm against slavery, but I'm not going to risk my life for it. And the riots were particularly bad. The military had to be called in to put it down in New York City because people felt, and here's that old thing, where no matter what, when people get upset at any sort of minority group, it's that they're taking our jobs. And so some people in the North said, why would I want to fight to defend someone so they can take my job? Now, obviously, that's a very narrow view of it. You're not fighting for them so they can take your job. You're fighting for them so they don't have to exist in the miserable life of slavery, which is obviously the bigger picture. And again, look at the dates. This is all right around, the summer of 1863. All this stuff happens. All right, I believe that is it. Thank you for watching.